Well, first of all, I think the Democrats are going to win the House. We've been prepared for it for a long time.
This is by far not one of the biggest crimes he's been charged with, but it carries the penalty that someone who's convicted of it is disqualified from running for future federal office.
Right.
And we've been really clear with China. We have said no policy changes at all. The one China policy stands. And the president, just a week ago today, spoke to President Xi. It was the 5th time that they spoke.
Xi warned that, quote, those who play with fire will perish by it.
A senior Justice Department source called the raid a spectacular backfire and also said that Garland had no prior knowledge of the date or the time of the specific raid, nor was he asked to approve it. How does that work? Is that possible?
Do you see what's happening here?
Copies of both the warrant and the FBI property receipt were provided on the day of the search to the former president's counsel, who was on site during the search. The search warrant was authorized by a federal court upon the required finding of probable cause. The property receipt is a document that federal law requires law enforcement agents to leave with the property owner. The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter. I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter.
To have 30 FBI agents, actually more than that, descend on Mar-A-Lago, give absolutely, no notice, go through the gate, start ransacking an office, ransacking a closet. They broke into a safe. He didn't even have anything in the safe. I mean, give me a break. And this is coming from what? The National Archives?
Were the lawyers allowed to follow the FBI through Mar-A-Lago today as they were looking everywhere? Did anyone watch them?
No, the answer is lawyers weren't allowed. They weren't allowed to be anywhere within sight. It's horrible. That's got to be a violation right there. They weren't allowed to be anywhere in sight.
FBI confidential human source. Well, I'll rest easy with that. Here's another truth. They're definitely hiring new agents. Here's a now removed job posting, by the way. We have the archive right here. This is posted online. It said, applicants must maintain a level of fitness necessary to effectively respond to life-threatening situations on the job, carry a firearm, be willing to use deadly force if necessary, be willing and able to participate in arrests, execution of search warrants, and other dangerous assignments. These agents are going to be armed to the teeth, who will be support staff. Think of them as, the 7-month pregnant women in the Air Force with the stretchy maternity flight suits.
Right. Well, the same argument that we had with money being fungible, right, with the Planned Parenthood's funding. Right, you're saying, we're not using it for abortions, we're using it for everything else. So it's that allows you to use the rest of your money for abortions.
Right.
And you don't even provide the services that you say you're providing. And so this is like, are you telling me you're going to have more customer service agents to make sure that our phone calls answered within 17 hours of waiting? Yeah. I don't think that's what's actually
You don't need any more hires. You just put on an answering machine that says, yes, let us help. Official report says that at the end of 2017, the tax agency had almost 4,500 guns and 5 million rounds of ammunition in its weapons inventory.
Good Lord, why that much ammunition?
From March to June 2022, the IRS purchased an additional $700,000 worth of ammunition, which I know is a drop in the bucket compared to the budget, but it also just seems, why do you need that much ammo? IRS agents can make arrests. We have this from Cornell here. It's again, all references available at ladoscredit.com. They have the right to make arrests without a warrant for any offense against the United States relating to the internal revenue laws committed in his presence, or for, why does it have to be a him, or for any felony cognizable under such laws if he has reasonable grounds to believe that the person to be arrested has committed or is committing any such felony. What? They don't even need a warrant. The IRS, again, it's basically an executive order goof that's gone on too long. They say that the new funding is only restoring previous capacity to IRS. This is a claim on time. And it's not entirely incorrect, except it is.
Wow, yeah.
It says, in all, the IRS might net roughly 20,000 to 30,000 new employees from the new funding, enough to restore the tax collecting agency staff to where it was roughly a decade ago. Well, here's the truth, actually. Yes, the IRS, their budget was decreased somewhat under Trump, which frankly was amazing to me. But eventually, the budget, with these new changes, will be 40% more when adjusted for inflation than it was in 2011. Miss Carrie Lake, how are you?
I'm doing great. I don't know if I'm excited or nervous. My kids are really excited about me being on this. They're teenagers and they listen to you every day. They've never been more proud of me than being on your show.
Oh, my Lord, that's not a good way to start. Sounds to me like you're asleep at the switch, Ma, if they're watching me every day. Hopefully they're not watching Dave. No, I very much appreciate you coming on. And I actually wanted to talk about sort of the male-female dynamics a little bit. But first, look, I promised my audience I would do this. Where do you line up on disbanding the FBI and gutting the IRS?
Oh, man. I mean, why don't we take those armed IRS agents and put them on the border?
There you go.
Maybe they can protect our border. It's just, it's typical Democrat craziness. Here we are struggling. We've got inflation. We can't afford gas and groceries. And the answer is, let's audit people. Let's raise their taxes. Let's audit them and send armed agents to their house.
Right.
It's insanity. And I would be for that, absolutely. Of course, I'm running for a state position, not a federal position. But this is why it's really important for your audience to pressure and ask their federal delegations, so their congressmen and women and senators, what they plan to do about this overreach of our government. The government is absolutely corrupt in every way.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, our audience already knows, but of course you're running for Arizona governor, just won a primary. And by the way, I was watching Maricopa going, I thought, it wasn't going to end up on the up and up. So I'm glad that you did win. But I really think it's important for our representatives, governors, senators, everyone to try and apply pressure to Republicans with national influence to disband the FBI, to make sure that we reduce the scope of the IRS. It's a litmus test for me now.
100% I agree, and we're going to push back with our states' rights. We're sovereign states. We are not serfs of the federal government. We created the federal government, and now they're like this big monster that's taken over our lives, and we're going to push back here. We're going to push on the 10th Amendment, and we are going to start taking on these issues from a state's point of view and a state's perspective, instead of letting these agencies with people who haven't been elected by the people dictate what we should be doing in our lives. We watched as the CDC tried to destroy our lives. We watched all of these agencies with their incredible overreach in our lives the last few years. It's been very, very obvious what's happening. And that's one of the reasons I think I'm doing so well. People want someone who's going to push back against this, I believe, illegitimate federal government right now with Joe Biden in charge.
Now, can you clarify, just to make sure that our audience understands, what do you mean when you say illegitimate federal government by Joe Biden? We all know how the media and our representatives would describe America.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
Okay, that's cute. But confirmed Eric Trump's statement to the Daily Mail. Watch.
So I don't know what time they got there. I got a phone call around 10 a.m. that I needed to get to Mar-A-Lago immediately. There was, incident, something happening, and I needed to get there and try to, figure it out. So I arrived about 10:30. The FBI was already there, had already started their search. So I'm guessing they probably got there around 9:30. They got there and they had a team of a couple dozen agents that dispersed on the property and did what the FBI does, just like in a movie. You see them
Sure.
doing their process. So, yeah.
Now, you were on site. However, my understanding is you were prevented from observing what they were doing. You were told you were not allowed to watch what they were doing, which seems
Right.
at odds with what your legal rights should be for your client.
Right.
Am I wrong?
Well, I was told that under Florida law or, whatever law they were following, that I do not have the right to watch their investigation. So I had to stand aside, and I could see them coming and going and, kind of figure out what they were doing and what areas they were searching. And every once in a while I would try to get an update. But as far as actually watching where they were searching and looking into, the storage facility and all of that, I was not allowed to watch that.
Eric Trump also insisted to the Daily Mail that the raid was approved by President Biden, stating Wednesday it's all a coordinated attack with the FBI. However, as we reported Tuesday, the White House said it was not given a heads up about the raid, stating, quote, "We did not have notice of the reported action and would refer you to the Justice Department for any additional information."
Mr. President, do you have a reaction to this testimony? And did you know about it in advance?
Is this administration weaponizing the Justice Department and the FBI against political opponents?
Peter, the president believes in the rule of law. The president believes in the independence of the Department of Justice.
Yes or no? Just
No,
yes,
that
the
is,
White House.
no, it's a yes or a no for you. I'm answering the question. You may not like it, but I'm answering the question. And I'm answering the question and I'm telling you that we are not going to comment on a criminal investigation. The president has been very clear. I laid out what his thoughts were back on January 7th in 2021 about how he saw the Department of Justice. And I'm just going to leave it there. We're not going to comment from here, from this White House, on a criminal investigation that is currently happening.
Now our great speaker, our...
Over the past 2 years, Chinese nationals have begun buying up tens of thousands of acres of farmland in the state of Oklahoma. While they've been doing so in a number of states, Oklahoma has become their go-to state for these purchases. Given the economic and the national security ramifications here, Congress should get involved. Well, now they are. My next guest, Senator Tom Cotton, and his colleague, Tommy Tuberville, introduced a bill this week that would ban the CCP and anyone associated with the CCP from buying up American land. And it's not just the Oklahoma farmland I told you about. According to the National Association of Realtors, Chinese investors were one of the top foreign purchasers of U.S. land, spending a record $6.1 billion last year just on existing homes.
Transparency to campaign donations and get special interest dark money out of politics. Dark money out of politics.
A fraud on Trump and his corporation by saying that it overvalued property in tax returns. Now, that's what this is all about. So Trump came in, he answered the subpoena, and then he took the Fifth Amendment, which I would have done. Anybody would have done it. Because no matter what you say in an interview like that, it's going to be used against you.
Is this White House weaponizing the Justice Department and the FBI against political opponents?
The president has been very clear.
Now manufacturing, the backbone of our economy, was hollowed out. We let semiconductor manufacturing go overseas. And as a result, today, we barely produce 10% of the semiconductors, excuse me, despite being the leader in chip design as well as...
U.S.
No weapon that is formed against President Trump will ever prosper.
The fact of the matter is going back, 60 years, even though this law was only promulgated in 1978, all presidents take a lot of records. All presidents have security clearances. Former presidents do. All former presidents have secure areas to keep them. And oftentimes there's a dispute between the National Archives and a former president about which documents belong in Washington, which can stay with the president. And those have always been resolved amicably or administratively. I mean, even Obama's had this, President Clinton's had it, Bush president has had it. This is normal. But to see it turn into a federal raid and a search warrant in the middle of the night is rather stunning. If this is just Federal Records Act and deciding, which documents belong in Washington, which belong in Mar-A-Lago, and an administrative dispute, and this is just turns out to be massive overreach by President Biden's Justice Department, this could be the best thing that ever happened to President Trump.
Two-tier system, it's actually a multiple-tiered system. You've got a system of justice now that's going to protect people like Hunter Biden, people that are connected to Democrats, to the elite. Then you have a justice system for the rest of Americans. They're not going to get special treatment. And then the third level is you literally have the weaponization of our law enforcement agencies against Democrats, the left's political opponents. And that's what we're seeing here, outrageously conducted against President Trump for the last 6 years. I mean, let's face it, the entire Russian collusion hoax, the exoneration of Hillary Clinton before that, the fact that the FBI knew the Steele dossier contained Russian disinformation and didn't tell anybody. They actually redacted that information in the FISA report, which we had redacted footnotes, classified footnotes that my staff found that was totally contrary to what was in the body of the report, where Bill Priestley, FBI assistant director, said, "Oh, we had no knowledge that the Steele dossier was tainted." They knew exactly that, and yet they let this all continue. So this is scandalous. It's corruption.
I did offer to President Trump the concept of the speakership, and he had little interest in it. I think he's interested in a different job in our federal government, not Speaker of the House. For my money, the best person to be Speaker of the House would be Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio. Our base trusts him. He's the hardest working, most talented member. And a question that I have gotten consistently at CPAC today, can we trust Kevin McCarthy? Can we trust Kevin McCarthy to be in the battle with us and not be a valet for the lobbyists and special interests on K Street? I still think that's an open question, and I certainly hope in the upcoming Republican primaries we get a lot of fighters ready to have our back and pursue this oversight first vision. We're here at CPAC. All of the evidence suggests that we're going to have a big win in the midterm elections, but I don't want to win by default or disillusion. I want us to have an actual vision that we can execute on. I think we should convert every committee in the Congress to an oversight committee. This is not time to hold hands in the warm spring rain with the Democrats and figure out if we can pass a spending bill or an infrastructure bill. We have to stop what they're doing on the mandates. We have to bring this spending spree to a total halt, and we have to seal the American border. And if we don't fulfill those commitments to our voters, then we'll be wiped out in the subsequent elections. And
Chris, Trump wants to see the warrant. Why hasn't he seen it already? I don't get it.
Yeah, by law, they have to leave an inventory at the scene of what they took, a receipt, if you will. They should leave a copy of the face of the warrant, not the affidavit that supports it, which tells the story of the probable cause that supported the affidavit, but the warrant itself, which would be revealing in some sense because it would say what they were looking for. So I'm not sure why they're not releasing that themselves right now, but there's going to be a hearing, as I understand it, as to whether this warrant will be unsealed. I am surprised DOJ has not made some sort of statement. The Attorney General guidelines allow for that. They could do it. They just don't seem to want to.
Kelley Blue Book notes that the average price of $66,000 is well above the industry average and more aligned with luxury prices versus mainstream prices. And on top of that, the 40-year high inflation is only making the prices of electric vehicles increase. But the Biden administration somehow magically expects every American to just go out right now and buy an electric vehicle.
Covered last night the extraordinary FBI raid on Donald Trump's home in Florida. Unprecedented. Now, the FBI was apparently, according to the media, just looking for documents that should have been filed in the National Archives. Well, send in the FBI. Now, as Trump and even all his main rivals in the Republican Party have said, this raid looks like another abuse of state power by the Democrats to punish an enemy of the left. And you know the crazy thing? President Joe Biden's spokesman didn't even deny it.
Agents raided President Donald Trump's Mar-A-Lago home in Florida under FBI Director Christopher Wray's leadership on the FBI possibly planting evidence at his home since no witnesses were allowed near the agents.
Are deplorable and dangerous.
Welcome to Joe Biden's totalitarian police state, where it's war on conservatives, and they're using Democrats in the justice system, deep state Democrats in the administration, the FBI and the DOJ, and there's no check on their activities in the House or the Senate because that's all run by Democrats too. We have requested through the Judiciary Committee for hearings. We're going to be in Washington on Friday for hearings to have Christopher Wray and have Merrick Garland come in and explain to the Judiciary Committee why this was necessary to raid a former president's home. And he's not just a former president. but the number one contender to take on Joe Biden in 2 years in 2024. They're attacking their political enemies. And I just read an article right before I came on that they have to use less intrusive means. So if they didn't subpoena these documents and they just raided his home without subpoenaing these documents, this raid may have been illegal.
Congressman, I wanted to get back to that issue. You were saying you think this, call it a raid or a investigation on Monday, might actually be illegal because they should have used means short of sending the 30 agents in. I think for a lot of people, this is kind of puzzling, to say the least. Trump sends them 15 boxes of documents in January. In May, I believe, or within the last few months, he allows them to come into Mar-A-Lago, justice officials to go to the storage area, go through the boxes. If the target or person involved is allowing this kind of access, and say, no, we need a warrant and now descend with all the agents. Walk us through that. Where do you see the possible illegality?
Yeah, that's the exact point. There was a federal prosecutor that was interviewed that said you have to use least obtrusive means. So if you're communicating with the person that you want the documents from and they're cooperating with you, which you just highlighted, Trump was cooperating with them, all you have to do is ask for the documents. If they don't give you the documents, then subpoena the documents. You don't jump to raiding somebody's home.
Do you want to see President Biden, Senator, run for a second term?
Well, what I want to see right now is that the Congress develop an agenda.
So let me rephrase the question. Do you want to see him run for re-election?
Look, right now my concern is electing more Democrats in this midterm election.
Doesn't sound like the Democrats want Joe Biden in the seat in 2024, Congressman. What do you think?
Were to get to his dad, 10% for the big guy. These foreign companies were buying political access to the White House. And with regards to Hunter, I mean, I'm just completely baffled by the fact that he's still running around a free man. If the laptop reports are true, which it seems like they are, where is the actual DOJ investigation into all these business dealings?
And what three countries did Hunter Biden do business with, per his laptop, which has now been verified finally, that are dominating headlines internationally right now? It's China, Russia, and Ukraine. And we saw recently with the White House not defending House Speaker Pelosi after Chinese state media said they would shoot down her plane if she went to Taiwan, and the president of the United States doesn't defend her, doesn't say a word. So the big question is, another question, is...
CEO says 2/3 of ammunition deliveries have gone missing with UPS.
Yes.
All right, take a look at this story from the New York Post.
No.
The judge who okayed the Mar-A-Lago raid is an Obama donor once linked to Jeffrey Epstein.
What?
Reinhart was elevated to magistrate judge in 2018 after 10 years in private practice. That November, the Miami Herald reported that he had represented several of Epstein's employees, including, by Reinhart's own admission to the outlet, Epstein's pilots, his scheduler, Sarah Kellen and Nadia Marcinkova, who Epstein once reportedly described as his Yugoslavian sex slave. Kellen and Marcinkova were among Epstein's lieutenants, who were granted immunity as part of a controversial 2007 deal with federal prosecutors that allowed him to plead guilty to state charges rather than federal crimes. Epstein wound up serving just 13 months in county jail and was granted work release. That's really, really interesting. In the Miami Herald story, they mention, actually, look, they say he donated to Barack Obama's presidential campaign months after he left the local U.S. Attorney's office to rep employees of the convicted pedo Jeffrey Epstein, who had received immunity in the long-running trafficking investigation of the financier. Washington Times, Trump ally Rep. Scott Perry says FBI seized his cell phone. One day after the raid on former President Donald Trump, Palm Beach authorities on alert about armed protesters expected at Mar-A-Lago. And I love the comments. People are saying things like, it's going to be a bunch of guys in polo shirts, khaki shorts, and sunglasses. From Yahoo News. Hillary Clinton promotes But Her Emails merch after FBI search of Trump's Mar-A-Lago.
Seriously?
Yeah, this is tough.
So her fundraiser pitch is, I did something way worse, got away with it, and now you're going to give me money.
Oh my God.
The day after his house got raided, literally 12 hours,
what is happening?
drops merch. And she has that Photoshop picture of her looking like a younger picture of her with her huge, all that work done on those cheekbones.
FBI delivers subpoenas to several PA Republican lawmakers, sources say. At least some of the individuals receiving subpoenas were told they were not targets of an investigation, according to at least 6 sources reached by Penn Live, but that they may have information of interest to the FBI. All of the sources have been briefed on the investigative moves in some way, but demanded anonymity in order to discuss them. The information being requested centered around U.S. Rep. Scott Perry and the efforts to seek alternate electors as part of former President Donald Trump's efforts to remain in office after the 2020 election, several sources said. The Washington Post on Wednesday, citing a source familiar with the probe, Also reported that Perry's cell phone was seized Tuesday as part of the Justice Department's criminal investigation into the use of fake electors to try to overturn President Biden's victory. The Post source also spoke on the condition of anonymity. Spokespersons for the Pennsylvania House and Senate Republican leaders did not confirm whether any of their caucus members received a subpoena. Quote, I am unaware of any FBI presence in the Capitol or Leader Benninghoff's office yesterday. To the extent House members or my staff may have been contacted by the FBI, we would not comment on a potential or ongoing investigation. So, this is the story we were originally going to lead with. This is from conventionofstates.com. Large majority of independents, Republicans, believe Trump's political enemies are behind the FBI raid and are now more likely to vote in 2022 midterms. This is from Trafalgar Group in the Convention of States. They say 83% of Republicans, 72% of independents now more likely to vote. I mean, that's really good news if you want Republicans to win.
It's the best get out the vote effort the government's ever had.
But right. And
is this unprecedented to arrest a former president for not turning in documents?
The former president that had committed this many provable criminal acts.
But what are the provable criminal acts, I guess?
Oh dear.
Provable criminal acts. Well, I'm done talking.
I was kind of shocked. Okay, the New York Post. Biden White House claims U.S. has zero inflation despite annual rate remaining at 8.5. Joe Biden actually said inflation last month, 0%.
Trump raid is not about classified documents. It's about January 6th is a hypothesis that I happen to agree with.
In a Tuesday post on Truth Social, President Trump referred to the raid as a continuation of Russian collusion allegations, the impeachment hoax, and other allegations. Trump wrote a horrible thing that took place yesterday at MAR-A-LAGO. We are no better than a third world country, a banana republic. It is a continuation of Russia, impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2,